Hi, welcome back to Bookworm. Today's book is about something that doesn't usually look like fear on the surface, but quietly controls a lot of our decisions. Waiting. Waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting for certainty, clarity, or the right moment. Most of us don't think of ourselves as afraid. We think of ourselves as careful, responsible, thoughtful. And yet, there are things we want to do, conversations we want to have, decisions we want to make, changes we want to start that stay on pause for years. This book made me realize how often fear hides behind very reasonable explanations. I just need more time. I should think this through. Now isn't the best moment. Do It Scared isn't telling you to jump without thinking. It's pointing out how often waiting becomes a way of protecting ourselves from discomfort, not danger. Fear doesn't always feel loud. Sometimes it feels quiet and logical. Sometimes it sounds like responsibility. If you're someone who reflects a lot, who wants to make the right choices, fear can feel especially convincing. It can sound like wisdom. It can sound like maturity. But over time, that waiting starts to shape your life. Opportunities pass, confidence doesn't grow, and the idea of starting becomes heavier the longer you delay. What I appreciate about this book is that it doesn't shame fear. It doesn't tell you to just be brave or wait, start ready. It explains that fear is normal and that it shows up differently in different people. Some people freeze, some people over prepare, some people distract themselves, some people stay busy so they don't have to decide. As you watch this video, I don't want you to pressure yourself to act. I don't want you to make promises or plans. Just notice where you've been waiting there and what you tell yourself while you wait. Before we continue, if you appreciate slow, honest conversations about growth and courage, please like the video and subscribe to Bookworm. It helps the channel grow and it tells me this kind of content is worth continuing. All right, let's step into the ideas behind Do It Scared and talk about why fear doesn't need to disappear before life can move forward.
Welcome in. Today we're going to take a slow, deep dive into a really powerful book by Ruth Soukup called Do It Scared. And we're going to talk about an emotion that, let's be honest, holds so many of us back, and that's fear. Now, the goal here isn't to somehow magically get rid of fear, because that's just not possible. The real goal is to get to know it, to understand it, so that we can stop letting it call the shots, and instead start building a life that we actually love, even when we're feeling afraid.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute foundation, a core truth about what fear even is. At its heart, fear's just a basic human instinct. It's not a character flaw, it's not a weakness, it's literally part of our design. Think of it like this. It's our built-in, ancient survival software. For our ancestors, that sudden racing heart, that jolt of adrenaline, that was everything when a predator showed up. It's the internal alarm system that screams, danger. And it was designed for one simple reason, to keep us alive and safe. And you know what? It has worked amazingly well for thousands of years to protect us from very real physical threats.
But here's the thing. In our modern world, that ancient protective instinct has a real downside. The problem is, our brain's alarm system hasn't really gotten the latest software update. It still goes off with the exact same intensity, but now it's being triggered by things that aren't actually life or death. And when there's no real physical danger, that same fear response can completely paralyze us. It turns into these invisible chains. You know what I'm talking about. It's that voice telling you, don't even bother applying for that job. You'll just get rejected. It's that feeling that freezes you when you want to speak up in a meeting because what if you say the wrong thing? It's that hesitation right before you share something you created with the world. I mean, these moments aren't saber-toothed tigers, but our nervous system acts like they are. And that holds us back from taking risks, trying new things, and ultimately from living the life we really want.
So, if fear is this big, powerful, ancient force, how in the world do we start to deal with it? Where do you even begin? Well, the first step, and this is so important, is what the book calls the diagnosis. You know, just like a doctor can't treat you without figuring out what's wrong first, we can't really tackle our fear until we understand what it looks like in our own lives. We have to name it. Before we can find the right medicine, we have to get really clear on how fear is showing up for us personally. And to help us with that diagnosis, the book gives us this amazing tool called the fear archetypes. It's a really fascinating idea. Based on a ton of research, they identified 7 common patterns, or you could say 7 personas, that fear tends to take on. You can think of them as the different masks that fear wears to disguise itself. And what these archetypes do is they give us a language for what we're experiencing. They help us see our behaviors not as some random personal failing, but as a predictable pattern. You've got archetypes like the procrastinator, the self-doubter, the people-pleaser, the rule follower, and a few others. And each one of these is a unique way that fear shows up, a specific strategy it uses to keep us tucked safely inside our little comfort zone.
And this right here is a point we really need to sit with for a minute. The feeling of fear, that's universal. We all get it. But the way it's expressed, the way it looks on the outside, that is deeply, deeply personal. The thing that stops you in your tracks might be totally different from what stops your partner or your best friend. For one person, fear might look like planning every single detail to death. For someone else, it might look like avoiding parties or social events. The moment you understand that your pattern is just that, a pattern, you can stop beating yourself up over it and start getting curious about how your own particular brand of fear works. So let's really dig into a couple of these archetypes just to see how sneaky fear can be. First, you've got the procrastinator. What's their deepest, number one fear? Making a mistake, getting it wrong, being judged. So to avoid even the possibility of that happening, they get stuck in this never-ending loop of getting ready. They'll research for weeks, they'll buy all the books, take all the courses, make the world's most perfect spreadsheet. Now to the procrastinator, this feels like they're being productive, but what is it really? It's a highly sophisticated way to delay. It's fear dressed up as diligence. Then you have the self-doubter. They're paralyzed by a totally different fear, the deep-down belief that they're just not good enough. Their inner voice is absolutely brutal, constantly telling them they're a fraud, they're an imposter, that they don't have what it takes, so they get sabotaged by their own thoughts before they even start. See, 2 very different masks, 2 different inner stories, but they both lead to the exact same place, staying stuck. Does either one of those sound just a little bit familiar to you? Because just recognizing your own pattern, that is the first and most powerful step you can take.
Okay, so understanding our fear archetype, that's the diagnosis. It gives us that aha moment of clarity. But just being clear about the problem doesn't actually solve the problem, right? So now we need to talk about the prescription. If these fear patterns are the illness, what's the cure? What's the antidote? How do we actually go from being stuck in our heads to finally taking real, meaningful action in our lives? And this brings us to a huge question, one that gets right to the heart of a trap that so many of us fall into. We tell ourselves things like, okay, I'll do it, but only when I feel more confident. Or I'll get started once I'm not so scared anymore. But here's the problem. If we wait for the fear to go away before we act, we are teaching our brain a really dangerous lesson. We're teaching it that the only time to move forward is when we feel 100% safe and certain. But real life, real growth, it never ever happens in the zone of total safety. Waiting like that just reinforces the exact habit of avoidance we're trying to break. It's kind of like standing at the edge of a pool and saying, I'll learn to swim as soon as the water is perfectly still. You're just going to be standing there forever.
So the book gives us a very simple, but incredibly powerful prescription. It's not some complicated formula or a magic pill. It's a practice. And it is this: the only true antidote to fear is action. That's it. So why? Why is that? Well, think about it. Fear lives in the future. It's all about the stories our minds create about what might happen, what could go wrong. Action, on the other hand, lives in the present. It's real. It gives our brain brand new, real-world data that can prove that fearful story wrong. It's really the only thing that has the power to do that. This is so important to understand. We can't wait for the fear to just evaporate before we begin. We can't think our way out of it. We can't analyze it into the ground, and we can't just use positive affirmations to make it go away. We have to act our way out of it. We have to start, even in the tiniest way, to make the fear get smaller. The action has to come first. The feeling of confidence and courage, that comes later. Let's just say that one more time because it's the absolute core of this whole thing. Action comes first, and the courage follows. It is never the other way around. Okay, so we get it. Action is the antidote. That's the prescription. But what does that actually look like in real life, day to day? I mean, this is not about taking some giant, terrifying leap of faith. It's actually about a series of very small, very intentional steps. So let's break down the process. How do I turn this big idea into a real habit that builds actual, lasting courage over time? The whole process really comes down to 3 key practices.
First, we have to completely change how we think about mistakes. Instead of seeing them as proof that we're a failure, we start to see them as data, just information. So if you try something and it doesn't work out, you didn't fail. You just collected some really valuable data about what to do differently next time. Second, we have to practice what the book calls imperfect action. This means you intentionally do something without needing it to be perfect. Send the email, even if it's not worded perfectly. Make the call, even if you might stumble over your words. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is just doing it. And third, we have to learn to just acknowledge the discomfort. When you feel that fear bubble up, instead of running from it, you can just say to yourself, "Oh, hello fear, I know this feeling. This is the feeling of growth." You start to see it as a normal part of the process, not a giant red stop sign. And this, right here, ties everything together. Real, lasting confidence isn't something you get from your friends telling you you got this. I mean, that external reassurance is nice, but it wears off pretty quickly. True confidence, which we should probably call self-trust, is built from the inside out, one brick at a time. And how is it built? By proving to yourself through lots of small actions that you can handle things, that you can try something and survive, even if it's not perfect. Every single small action you take is another piece of evidence you're handing to your brain. You literally become your own proof.
And this really is the core mantra of the entire book. You know, this popular idea we have of a hero being someone who is completely fearless, that's a total myth. It sets an impossible standard for the rest of us. Real courage, the kind of courage you and I can have every single day, isn't about not feeling fear. Real courage is feeling that knot in your stomach, hearing that voice of doubt in your head, nodding to it, and then taking the step anyway. It's about taking action while you feel the fear. It's about doing it scared. It's about doing it while you feel scared.
So from now on, the next time you feel that little flutter of anxiety or that tension in your shoulders when you're about to do something new, I want you to try seeing it as a good sign. That feeling of discomfort is not a warning sign to run back to what's safe. It is the friction of growth. It's the emotional version of your muscles being sore after a good workout. It's just a sign that you're getting stronger. It is the literal feeling of your world getting just a little bit bigger.
All right, so we've diagnosed our fear, we have the prescription, which is action, and we understand the process of building courage, one small step at a time. And all of this brings us to a final, really powerful choice. It's a choice we all face every single day, in big moments and small ones. And it's a choice between two very different kinds of pain, the sharp pain of action or the long, dull ache of regret. Let's think about that first kind of pain, the pain that comes from taking action and maybe making a mistake. The book shares this really haunting insight from all the stories it's based on. The pain of trying something and having it not work out. It's sharp, yes, but it is temporary. It stings for a bit. Your ego might feel a little bruised. But then what happens? You learn something, you adjust your course, and you move on. And eventually, that feeling fades. But that other kind of pain, the pain of regret that comes from not acting at all, that is a much heavier, much longer-lasting burden to carry. It's not a sharp sting. It's more like a chronic, dull ache that just never quite goes away. It's the quiet, haunting question that plays on a loop in the back of your mind. What if? What if I had just applied for that job? What if I had started that little business? What if I had just told that person how I really felt? That is the ghost of a life you were too afraid to even try to live. And that is the true hidden cost of letting fear win time and time again. So we'll end with a quiet question. It's not for me to answer, it's just for you to sit with for a moment. It doesn't have to be some huge, life-altering leap. In fact, it's probably better if it's not. But just thinking about everything we've talked about, what is one small thing, one tiny, imperfect, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, scary step that you can take today to start acting your way out of fear? Whatever that thing is, no matter how small it seems, just know that it is a step in the right direction. It's a step toward a bigger and a braver life.
Welcome back. Before you move on, I want to slow things down because fear has a way of making everything feel urgent and heavy. If this book resonated with you, it's probably because you recognize that waiting, not laziness, not lack of desire, but hesitation. One of the most important things Do It Scared reminds us is that fear isn't a flaw. It's a response. It shows up when something matters, when there's uncertainty, when the outcome isn't guaranteed, and that means fear will always be part of a meaningful life. You don't become confident first and then act. Confidence grows after you move, quietly through experience. Waiting for readiness often feels safe, but over time it can shrink your world. Not dramatically, gradually, choices become harder, fear feels louder. And the idea of starting carries more weight than it should. This book isn't asking you to push yourself or force courage. It's asking you to stop letting fear make decisions on your behalf. You don't need to make a big change today. You don't need to confront anything or leap into action. Sometimes the shift begins with a single honest question. Am I waiting because this needs time or because I'm afraid of how it will feel? That awareness alone can change how you move forward. If this video helped you feel a little more understood, please take a moment to like it. And if you want more conversations like this, calm, thoughtful, and pressure free, make sure you're subscribed to Bookworm. If you feel comfortable, I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. What is one thing you've been waiting to feel ready for, even though you already know it matters? Thank you for spending this time here. Take whatever resonated with you, leave what didn't, and be gentle with yourself as you think about your next step. I'll see you in the next one.